Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashrafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In last week's lesson, we made a start on the Battle of Badr, and I gave a brief introduction regarding the chains of events, the sequences of events which led to the Battle of Badr. And I mentioned the story of Abu Sufyan, his caravan going past the routes and the roads of Medina Munawwara towards Syria, and Abu Sufyan, fearing that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions may attack his caravan, he then conveyed a message to the people of the Quraysh to send out an army to combat this particular threat. So this is what we touched on, or what I mentioned in last week's lesson. Now we're gonna continue with the Battle of Badr, but look at it in a bit more detail regarding some certain side events and side issues which led to the actual battle itself. Now on the 12th of Ramadan, 2nd Hijri, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with 313 Sahabas left Medina Munawwara, and the Muslim army, or the Sahabas in total, they had 2 horses and 70 camels, and whatever weapons they had was very, very small, like a small knife, sword, dagger, these kind of things. But in terms of legwork, there were only 2 horses and 70 camels. And it's mentioned in the hadith that the 70 camels, each camel was distributed between 3 Sahabas and 3 companions. What I mean by that is, one companion, he rode on the camel for say 2 miles, and then he would get off the camel, and then the next Sahabi would get on the camel, then he would ride for another couple of miles, then he would get off, and then the 3rd Sahabi and the 3rd companion would get on the camel. So because there was only 70 camels and there were approximately 313 Sahabas, so Abu sallallahu alaihi wasallam distributed each camel between 2 to 3 Sahabas. And it's mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sharing his camel with Hazrat Abu Lubaba radhiyallahu anhu and with Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu anhu. And Hazrat Abu Lubaba and Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu anhu, they kept on telling Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, pleading Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, oh Rasulullah, Prophet of Allah, you sit on the camel, and we'll, from Medina to Badr, we'll just walk it, but you just sit on the camel, you do the aram, you take it nice and easy, and we'll do all the walking. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam refused, and he said that I don't want to be mahroom from divine reward. Meaning that, obviously, as you know, there's reward in walking. When you walk into the battlefield, there's reward. The same way when you walk into the masjid for Jamaat and for namaz, there's reward in that. Similarly, when you are walking for any good deeds, good actions, not only do you get reward for doing that good action, you also get reward for the footsteps or the efforts or the mujahada you take to do that particular good action. That's why we say that tahajjud and other kind of a'mals where there's a lot of effort needed is the best of all actions. Why? Because not only are you getting reward for the actual ibadat, the actual namaz, or the actual a'mal or deed itself, you're also getting reward for the mujahada and the effort you took place before. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Hazrat Abu Lubab and Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu anhu that I don't want to be mahroom and deprived of divine reward. So therefore Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would walk, and then when his turn came, then he would get on the camel, and then when his turn came to get off the camel, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would then get off the camel, and then he would start walking, and the other Sahabas would then take turn to make their way towards Badr. Now, as I was mentioning in last week's lesson, that there were 313 Sahabas, and from the Quraysh side there were 1,000 men. Now the Quraysh, in particular their leader Abu Jahl, he was like the commander of the force, and he and his troops, they arrived in Badr with a swagger, They were thinking, oh, we got 1,000 men, 313 Muslims and Sahabas. There's no match. So they were coming with the intention of, oh, the battle's going to be really easy. They even brought singing women, like singing girls, to come, because they were already, like we say, they were already like getting the party ready. They were thinking, oh, we're just going to defeat the Muslims and afterwards we'll stay here, we'll get the girls singing, we'll drink alcohol, we'll have a good laugh and so on. Sometimes it happens that when you think that you're going to achieve something, you already start thinking about the party afterwards. So you start thinking, okay, who do I need to invite and so on? You know, how many crates of alcohol I need? How many, you know, singing girls or musical instruments I need? So Abu Jahl, he's already made his mind up what's he going to do afterwards. So he thought, oh, this battle's going to be a walkover. And then afterwards, he was thinking about the celebration on unscrewing the cork and, you know, having a good laugh and, you know, singing and mixing with the girls. He's already made the party preparation afterwards. So Abu Jahl, he came with all the swagger, with pride and arrogance. And it's mentioned that there were two people. There was Abu Lahab, who was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's uncle, but remember, he didn't believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He couldn't come. So from the leaders of the Quraysh, he couldn't come. And there was somebody else who was also a leader of the Quraysh, whose name was Umayyah bin Khalf. Now Umayyah bin Khalf, he didn't want to come for the battle. But Abu Jahl, he kept on persisting, he kept on telling him that Umayyah, you need to come for this battle. And then eventually Umayyah had to come for this particular battle. Now, why didn't Umayyah want to come for this battle? Now, his story is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari. There's actually a chapter regarding his story in Sahih al-Bukhari, why Umayyah bin Khalf didn't want to come to this battle. Now, Umayyah bin Khalf, he was a mushrik, he was a pagan, he didn't believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he was also a good friend of Hazrat Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu. Hazrat Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu, he was one of the Ansars, inhabitant of Medina Munawwara, so they were good friends. And it's mentioned that whenever Umayyah bin Khalf would go to Syria for business, because remember, if you go to Syria, you need to pass by Medina Munawwara, he would go to Medina and he would stay in Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu's house. And whenever Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu would want to go to Yemen for business, he would then pop over to Makkah and stay over at Umayyah bin Khalf's house. Okay, so they were like best friends, you could say. Now Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu, he once came to Makkah, and as was his custom, he then stayed over at Umayyah bin Khalf's house. Now when he was in his house, he said to Umayyah bin Khalf that, I want to perform Umrah, I want to perform Tawaf. Remember, as I explained before, that even the mushriks, the pagans, they also did Tawaf and Hajj as well. Obviously their Tawaf was totally different to the way we do it. So Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu, he said that, look, as I'm in Makkah, I want to actually do Tawaf around the Baytullah. So he then asked Umayyah bin Khalf that, can you take me to the Baytullah? Can you be my escort and can you protect me from any kind of problems and any difficulties? So it's mentioned that Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu, he was doing Tawaf around the Baytullah when Abu Jahl, the leader of the Quraysh, he came and he stopped Sa'd bin Mu'az and he said that, you know, what are you doing here? Remember, Sa'd bin Mu'az had converted to Islam. And Abu Jahl, obviously, he's the leaders of the Quraysh. Obviously, they don't like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He doesn't like any Muslims. So when he saw Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu doing tawaf, he was saying, okay, what are you doing here? You know, it's like sometimes we say that, or this is our patch. You know, what are you doing in our patch for? So this is what Abu Jahl was saying to Sa'd bin Mu'az, that Makkah is our patch. What, you know, why on earth, you know, how did you have the tenacity to come to Makkah and perform tawaf around the Baytullah? So Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu then spoke to Abu Jahl and so on. Obviously the argument, the conversation got a bit heated, and Abu Jahl said to Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu that if it wasn't for Umayyah, then I would have killed you. So Abu Jahl saying to Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu that if Umayyah didn't give you any security, I would have killed you. Now Sa'd bin Mu'az radhiyallahu anhu then got angry and he said to Abu Jahl that if I want, I could stop you from passing through Medina when you are going to Syria for training. So this is Sa'd bin Mu'az, he's saying to Abu Jahl that if I want, I could speak to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I'll tell Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that whenever you go to Syria for business, not to allow you to pass through Medina Munawwara. Now when Hazrat Sa'd bin Mu'adh radiallahu anhu said this to Abu Jahl in a kind of loud voice and in an angry voice, Umayyah said to Sa'd bin Mu'adh, "Oh, why are you speaking to our leader Abu Jahl like this for?" So then Sa'd bin Mu'adh radiallahu anhu then got angry on Umayyah, and he said to him that you be quiet. And then he said to Umayyah a prophecy which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Sa'd bin Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, and the prophecy was that Umayyah would soon get killed. Now because of that reason, Umayyah, after this particular prophecy said by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he knew that his number was up, and so he was very, very reluctant to leave Makkah. He, like, basically for the next few months or so, he was just in Makkah. He didn't leave Makkah at all. So when Abu Jahl told him that, "Oh, you need to leave Makkah, you need to come to Badr and fight against the Muslims," so Abu Umayyah bin Khalf said, "No, I don't want to leave," and so on. "I know if I was to leave, I'm going to get killed." Then Abu Jahl said, "Oh, you have to come. You're one of the leaders of the Quraysh. If you don't come, then how about the followers? They're not going to be coming." So then Abu Jahl said to Umayyah that this is what I'll do. I'll buy a fast galloping horse for you, like a very tez gora for you. So you could ride this particular horse, and whenever you feel scared or you fear some kind of apprehension that somebody may attack you, then you could basically do a U-turn and you could use this horse to go all the way back to Makkah. So when Abu Jahl said this, then Umayyah, he got a bit sukoon or contentment in his heart, said, "Okay, I'll make my way." Obviously he then left. Obviously Taqdeer had it that obviously he was not going to go back to Makkah Mukarramah, and in this particular battle he was killed. So as I was saying that this is an example of a story of Abu Jahl and Umayyah, where Abu Jahl, not only did he take himself into destruction, but he also led others to destruction as well. And that's why it's mentioned in a hadith which can be found in Tahawi, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that the people who will have the severest azab in the hereafter will be imamun dalal, i.e. imam who misguided others. So the imam, he'll go to hell as well. Why? Because he was on the misguidance, he was on the wrong. But also at the same time, if he also misguided others as well, he will also be taking them to the hellfire. So, and this is also mentioned in the Quran as well, where Allah talks about Fir'aun, يَقْدُمُ قَوْمَهُ فَأَوْرَدَهُمُ النَّارِ بِئْسَ الْوِرْدُ الْمَوْرُودِ. That Fir'aun, not only would he go to the fire of hell because he claimed to be God, but at the same time he also would take his wuzara, his ministers, to the fire of hell. Why? Because he compelled them to believe in him. So similarly, Abu Jahl here, he not only did he not believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and obviously he would be punished in the hereafter, but he also compelled others to go as well, and he also made the others doomed as well. Because obviously only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but if he hadn't forced Umayyah bin Khalf, Wallahu a'lam, Umayyah bin Khalf could have remained in Makkah, and you never know, later on he may have converted to Islam, like was the case with Abu Sufyan, who initially was a staunch enemy of Islam, but obviously after the conquest of Makkah, he converted to Islam as well. Now the story then moves on that the night before the battle took place on the 17th of Ramadan, which was on a Friday. But the night before, it's mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and also the Sahabas, they spent the entire night in ibadat and in worship and in du'as. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahabas, they were in ibadat, they were in worship, they were praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for victory. And it's also mentioned that the day before the battle, so the battle was on the 17th of Ramadan, which was on a Friday, so on the Thursday, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took a group of Sahabas to the Badr area. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then pinpointed the exact spots where the enemies, where the Quraysh, where the pagans of Makkah would be killed. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that such and such a person would be killed on this spot, such and such a person would be killed on that spot. And then the narrator of the hadith then goes on to say that by Wallah, the spot which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that such a enemy, such a mushrik will get killed, it goes on to say that one balisht ke barabar it didn't increase, meaning that the exact spot Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that such a person would get killed, in that very same spot that person got killed. And it's mentioned that there wasn't any kind of ek balish, like one handspan, idhar udhar ka fark nahi hua, exact same spot where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said such a disbeliever would get killed, exactly that's where that person died. Now on the 17th of Ramadan, the following morning, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he got the Sahabas ready, and the practice in those days was that the Sahabas, or the two groups, what happens is that they stand in a straight line. So you have the Muslims in a straight line, and then you'll have the enemies on the other side, and they will be in a straight line as well, and then they will start the fight and so on. Now during this particular time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was straightening the rows for the battle and for the war, there was a Sahabi in the name of Sawad bin Ghaziyya radhiyallahu anhu. And there's a beautiful story about Sawad bin Ghaziyya radhiyallahu anhu, that what happened was that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you know, it was his sunnah to carry a stick. So what he did was that Sawad bin Ghaziyya radhiyallahu anhu's chest was sticking out. Like sometimes it happens in the saf of namaz, that his chest was kind of sticking out. So what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam do with his stick? He kind of like pointed it to his chest and kind of like dabbed it here, lightly obviously, just to basically gesture to him, to do ishara to him, just to move slightly back. Now when Sawad bin Ghaziyya, when he felt the poke of the stick, he then said to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, you have done zulm on me, like you have hurt me, like with the stick. Obviously Rasulullah did it lightly, that you have hurt me and I want to now take badla against you. Because obviously if you hit someone, it's like the usul in this world and the usul of Islam, that if you hit someone, then you should let that person hit you. Otherwise, if he doesn't forgive you, then the hereafter he could say to Allah, Allah, he hit me zulman, and I want to now take his reward. So in the hereafter you'll be stuck, all the reward will go to that person and his sins will come to you. So it's best that you do all the, the forgiveness and the maafi and the musawat in this world, and don't leave it until the hereafter. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam poked him. So obviously according to the Qanun was that, okay, so Sawad bin Ghaziyya would now take badla against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then lifted his shirt and he said to Sawad bin Ghaziyya that, okay, do whatever you want to my chest. So then the hadith goes on to say that Sawad bin Ghaziyya then hugged that area and he kissed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on his chest, and he said that, oh, that's my badla, that I just wanted to kiss you, and that's it. Obviously, as I mentioned before, that every single aspect of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life, there's barakah. It's like a very famous hadith, comes in Sunan Nasai, that once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was lying down on a leather mat, he said like a leather rug. So now his sweat came out, and obviously it's like a leather rug, so it doesn't like seep in like if it's like cotton or wool. So there was sweat on the leather rug. So it's mentioned that Sulaim radhiyallahu anha, she then collected the sweat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and she put it into her perfume box. So then she mixed it and then she would use it as a perfume every single day. Now obviously if it was like one of our sweats, obviously is anybody going to put it into their perfume box? No. Obviously the reason why she put it into her perfume box was because of the fragrance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sweat. So exactly here, Sawad bin Ghaziyya, he wanted to kiss Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why he thought that this would be the perfect opportunity, and he did that. Now, just very quickly, the next part. Now, it was again another tradition, you could say, or a sunnah in those days, that whenever a battle would start, there would firstly be a one-to-one fight between few people, and as soon as that particular the fighting there finishes, then that would be the signal for the rest of the army to come and join in the fight and the war. Now this in Arabic is known as mubaraza with a mim ba alif raza ta marbuta, mubaraza. Now there were three people from the mushriks and the pagan side. They were Utbah, Shayba and Walid. So them three were three mushriks, Utbah, Shayba and Walid. And the three from the Muslim side were Hazrat Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Hamza radiallahu anhu, and Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. So the three from the Muslims were Ubaidah, Hazrat Hamza and Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. And it's mentioned that Ubaidah, he was clashing with Utbah, whereas Hazrat Hamza radiallahu anhu was challenging Shayba, and Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu was challenging Walid. And it's mentioned that Hazrat Hamza and Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, they easily defeated Shayba and Walid easily. But Ubaidah radiallahu anhu was actually injured by Utbah. He was actually severely injured. And then afterwards it's mentioned that Hazrat Ali and Hazrat Hamza then joined in, and then they managed to kill Utbah. However, Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, he was injured. Now obviously that was like the signal they needed, or all the Sahabas needed to then now start the battle. Now when the battle started, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw that the Muslims were very, very less in number, and he realized that the situation is very, very on the edge in terms of there's so many of them. They had all the best equipment, and there were only 313 Sahabas. Many of the main Sahabas, Kibari Sahabas, were present in this particular battle. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went into his tent and he started praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, starting doing dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did dua, then he would pray namaz, he would go into sajda, then he would get up and then he would do dua, and he kept on doing this. And in particular, there was a dua which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he said that, "Oh Allah, if we are defeated today, if we Muslims are defeated today, there'll be no one on earth who would be worshipping you." So as soon as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made this dua, that's when the angels started descending. As I explained in last week's lesson, that's when all the angels and the malaikas, they came from the sky, and they started helping the Sahabas and the Muslim Jamaat to wage war against the mushriks and the pagans of Makkah. And the same way we have like shaitan, same way shaitan puts kind of doubts in our heart. Similarly, the angels coming puts peace in our heart. And that's why whenever we do dhikr, what does the hadith say? The gatherings of dhikr, that's when malaikas, angels come. So not only do we get the barakah of the zikr and the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but another reason why there's contentment in our heart is because in that gathering where dhikr and remembrance of Allah takes place, what happens? Who are present there? Angels and the malaikas. And because of the angels being around, then what happens? It gives us a nice feeling and a nice contentment in the heart. So exactly here as well, that whenever there's angels there, it's always like a blessed feeling. You don't feel any problems and so on. That's why whenever we are here, we always feel nice, and there's always a nice feeling when we are here. Why? Because we are doing dhikr, we're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're doing dua, dars, lectures and so on. So angels are always here. So when angels are here, we feel nice. Similarly, whenever like there's a madrasa or something like that, there's always the angels there, you have a nice feeling. So whenever there are angels there, there's a nice feeling. But obviously whenever there's no angels and there's shaitan there, then that's when we have problems and so on. That's why probably at work there's always like evil things around, or any other places outside, because there's evil things around. So there's shaitan always there, so we don't get that same contentment and the same good feeling. But whenever there's angels and malaikas there, that's where you get a nice feeling and so on. It's barakah for the Muslims, and that's what exactly happened to the Sahabas, that obviously there were angels there, malaikas there. We'll look at in detail next week that how many angels exactly came and how did they help Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahabas. May Allah give us the tawfiq to act what we said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.